you just need the HDMI. Yeah. My mouse can drive the screen. Záložky prezentace. Tam AM. Here.
So, good afternoon. Tadyhle to se musí podržet. Je zapnuté, je zapnuté. Gentlemen, I would like to start the second part of our conference program today. This section will be moderated by Mirek, OK2 Alpha Queen, and the late afternoon part will be moderated by Bernd DL7 APV. I still don't see him, but he will be somewhere here. Ah, I see him, okay. First of all, we have here very important and very, how to say it, strange topic for us as a ham radius about the 23 centimeters. This is a Galileo. Chief of the C5, Dick, PA2DW, will moderate everything about that. We had about this also the meeting in Friedrichshafen 3 weeks ago or something like this. And those gentlemen, including the Attila, OM1AM, and Barry, G4SJH, will tell you more details about how dangerous the situation about the Galileo is for us. Before I give them the word, I tell you my opinion. If we lose 23 cents, EME is dead. Dick.
Thank you for your encouraging words. But I do have to agree with you, and I also think that 23 centimeters is important for many more things. It's the bridge from normal radio work to microwave and to the special techniques that involve that. But Barry is going to tell more about that. Yes, I'm very happy that we have been able to get Barry here to this meeting. Barry is not an EMEer. He might be after this meeting. I hope so. it maybe encourages him to do that. And Attila, he's here also. So we are very happy about that because the community has really stirred up about this issue. We are worried and. Of course, everybody starts speculating or think, well, it will be this, it will be that on social media, etc., etc. So we thought it is the best way to get it from the right at the first source, which is the ITU, and both Attila and Barry are very important to that. Barry is I will introduce you shortly, Barry. You are the chairman of the IRU Region 1 SRLC, which is the Spectrum and Regulatory Committee. It's one of the most important committees in the IRU, I think. And he is the IRU Global Lead Participant for World Radio Conference 23, so next year, regarding AI 9.1b. And what that is, you will find out when Barry talks. At the ITU and at the CEPT. Barry will present the current situation on the technical studies and negotiations that are going on regarding the 20 meter band and the radio navigation satellite service, also known as Galileo, but there are more, you will find out. And Attila, on 1 AM, he works at the ITU. We have also understood he works very often at 4U1 ITU. Attila is going to explain about the WRC process and, let's say, the introduction part of what this is all about. And he will explain briefly the outcome of WRC 2019, in which it was decided that the usage of 23 centimeter will be reviewed. I quickly give the word to Attila. The microphone is for you. Oh, you have an own microphone. That's good.
Thank you, Dick. I promised to finish in 10 minutes, so I prepare good balls. I hope I will prepare good balls for Barry. So let's go quickly. First, I will have some takeaways. I hope for everybody is crystal clear, including the radio amateur community, that the radio regulation is a legal binding document which is mandatory for all services. Amateur and amateur satellite services, one of the services of the radio regulations. So the radio regulations is defining the rights and the obligations for all administrations and or services with one absolutely important goal is in order to avoid harmful interference between the services. And the other most important thing is that only the World Radio Communication Conference can modify the radio regulations. No ITU, no member states, only the World Radio Communication Conference can modify it. Last one was in 19, the next one will be soon in 23 in Dubai, already set up the place and dates. The radio regulation is principally based on the concept of frequency allocation services. Allocation service, the whole allocation table is based on this concept, and there are different procedures, coordination, plan, non-plan services, which are finishing with the recording in the master register. So please remember also, which I tried to send a message to the amateur community several years, that only recorded assignments in the master registers are protected. So this is very important, especially for the amateur satellite community. Try to send a message that it's obligatory for the amateur satellites to notify, because with this they will gain the protection only at the scale. The second thing is, this was the last WRC where also we were there with Barry. So it was like Olympic Games, 3,400 participants, and between the 3,000 participants there were also observers, and between the observers also the YARU representations. Here you can see the outcome of the WRC. For all the links what I am providing are free downloads. So the WRC purpose, as I mentioned, every 4 years, is to harmonize spectrum, create regulatory certainty, and because of this harmonization and certainty requires consensus, it's requiring time, effort, patience, but if it's agreed, it's valid for 10, 20, 30 years because the WRC is setting up always the agenda. It's not like we will meet and we set up the agenda. It's set up for, WRC 19 set up for 23, and the provisional agenda even for 27, etc., etc. So, and the cycle is, as you can see, WRC, final acts, agenda, studies in the study group. So what Barry will say, he is here in the study group period, which will report next year to the conference preparatory meeting, and the CPM report will go to the WRC. So this is the basic circle, every 4 years machinery going around and around with the WRC agenda items. So one of the outcome which when Zdeněk requested me to prepare was the outcome of the WRC, and one of the most important outcome, but it's not related to us directly, to the EME community, was the amateur satellite service recognition in 50 mega. Just for a short to say that now also in the region 1 amateur service gain a secondary service allocation, and in some countries based on the footnote primary services. Here, very important takeaway for all of you from the services definition. The most amateur satellite, amateur services, if we look to the allocation table, primary service as amateurs are only 2 meters, and after then up to 24 giga, all bands amateur service is only secondary. So only 24 and 47 giga is the amateur service primary. In the rest, 70 centimeter, 23 centimeter, etc., 3 centimeter. Amateur service is secondary, means that the secondary service has to respect and shall not cause harmful interference to the primary service, not to claim protection. So this is the first takeaway for you to understand when Mary will speak about the 23 centimeter, that we have principally a problem there that the amateur service and amateur satellite service is currently today defined as a secondary service. So the 50 mega, you can look, I will not go to the details, but we go immediately to the important thing, which was the WRC 23 decision, the WRC 19 decision to set up an agenda item 91B, which is in the magic resolution 774 to call for studies on the technical and operation measures to be applied in the frequency band 1 to 41300 in ensure the protection of the RNSS, and to say, perform a detailed review of different systems and applications used in the amateur service in the 23 centimeter band, and taking in account these studies, it's necessary to study technical and operational measures to ensure the protection of the RNSS, without considering the removal of the amateur satellite service allocation. So the task for the study groups is done, and now this year, and Gary will speak about the details where we are now. Here we have to say that in the RNSS band, there is one very important thing, which was the 40 mega extension gained the RNSS in 2000, where the administration's amateur community did not react because it was the arrival of the RNSS in the 1260-1300 in 2000. Practically 20 years the service was silent, but came as a primary directly to the band. And now, because it will be used, they are asking to be protected. So the problem is in these new 40 mega extensions of the WRC 2000 decision. So there are all RNSS allocations, the L5, L2, L1, etc., etc. This is for you just the summary. Where are the RNSS other services, but the critical is this 40 mega. So the compatibility is clearly done. Primary service, RNSS, radio location, radio navigation, Earth exploration, space research, and amateur secondary. So the secondary service have to respect the primary services again. Here is the detailed regulatory situation in 23 centimeters. So again, you can read, but in fact, the amateur satellite service through the magic footnote is there also, but again, as a secondary service, not to cause harmful interference. From other hand, we have to say that the radio navigation service is considered as safety service, and for this reason, it's even more sensitive, the interference to the RNSS service as to other services, because it's clearly defined in the radio regulation that the harmful interference will endanger the functioning of the radio navigation and other services, etc., etc. So the RNSS has a very special status as of safety of life, so we have to be extremely careful and extremely realistic about the operational and technical studies in the band. So that's all. The last slide is quite important for you, because I hear also very frequently, oh, radio regulations are expensive, we don't know where, how to download. So here is everything free of charge. You can download the final acts, radio regulation in 6 languages, the complete radio regulations, and any ITUR recommendation related to RNSS or to amateur services or compatibility studies, all recommendations which are defining the services. So this is the most important takeaway for you. Thank you.
We can take this one. Yeah. Oh, okay, well, I have this one. I give this to Barry. Attila, thank you very much for this. Well, it is a disturbing message, but it has to be told. I have a small present for you.
Wow, thank you.
In appreciation to come here to explain this. And Barry, I now give the floor to you and the microphone.
Okay, thank you very much, Dick, and good afternoon, everybody. And thanks to Attila for a very interesting, I think, introduction to, which saves me a little bit of time in what I have to explain here today. And also, I give great thanks to Zdenek, who doesn't seem to be here at the moment, but for inviting me along here to talk at your EME conference. And as Dick said, I am not an EMEer. But you know, you guys are starting to tempt me. I hear about some interesting developments with antennas and things this morning, and I am a microwave operator, hence a member of the UK Microwave Group, so I do have an interest in these frequencies, as well as carrying out this activity on behalf of the IARU. So I'm here really as a representative of the IARU Region 1, but as Dick mentioned, I'm dealing with this agenda item 9.1b, as it's called, and you've just seen what that is. Attila put it up on the slide. as a volunteer for the IARU, and I'm taking the global lead, and we have a community of people. There's about maybe a dozen of us around the world who are taking an interest and actually participating in the discussions and negotiations in the ITUR and so on. So it's not just me, but yeah, we have a team of people who are working on this. So let's see if I'm close enough. I am. Look at that, close enough to my laptop. Right. So what I hope to do today then is to give you a sense of the problem that we're facing, and to some extent Attila has already explained that very much from a regulatory perspective. Help you understand where the work is taking place, what is being done, what we expect the outcome to be, and obviously what that means for us in the 23 centimeter band and how we might use the band going forward. I'd like to say I'm not quite as pessimistic as some people at the moment about losing the band, so that's not in my scope at the moment. But you know, there will be some changes. That's absolutely for sure that will happen. So the topic has been under discussion for quite some time already. In fact, since before probably around 2019, actually, in the preparation cycle for the last World Radio Conference, when it was under discussion in the under the scope of being an agenda item for this WRC 23. As Attila mentioned, the agenda for forthcoming WRCs are set 4 years ahead, so you know, the study period can take place and so on. So this was first discussed back in 2019, and at that time we tried very hard to avoid it becoming an agenda item, because that is absolutely the best way of avoiding the problem. Unfortunately, we were unable to do that. We had some very strong political powers pushing against us, which we couldn't overcome. So unfortunately, it did come onto the agenda, but it's come under this item 9 of the agenda. So this means it's kind of an issue. So it has some different status to some of the earlier 1-point-something agenda items that will make absolute changes to the radio regulations and allocations. But this agenda item doesn't necessarily mean that there will be a change to the radio regulations resulting from the work. But, you know, never say never, right? So it's hopefully that will be the case, but we'll see where we go. Okay, so this is a little bit of a repeat of Attila's slide there. You can see where we are. So this is the problem, okay? So this is the whole suite of bands for the RNSS, radio navigation satellite systems, across the range from 1164 up to 1610 megahertz. You can see they have a number of subbands, and there are a number of systems: GPS, GLONASS, GPS obviously US, GLONASS is the Russian system, Galileo European. It doesn't have the Chinese system on this one, but or the Japanese one. But you can see they're allocated different blocks within these ranges. So Galileo is the main issue for us at the moment, as you've heard, which is in this E6 block here, which is from 1260 to 1300 megahertz. Galileo also operates in other bands here at in the so-called E5 A and B. I don't know why they're called E or whatever. And then this E1 band. You can see that GPS is not within our band, although there is actually a small portion apparently that just creeps into the bottom of our band here. But you can see also we have GLONASS, which is also in our band as well. And as you'll see on another slide, there's actually a Chinese system and a Japanese system in the band. And the problem is multi-level, actually, because actually it's not just about ITUR. We've been talking about the context of the work in ITUR. It's also being studied on a regional basis within Region 1, which is the Europe, Africa's region from a global perspective, within CEPT, because Galileo is a European system, so they've kicked off the discussion in the European regulatory committees. And these are in the CEPT under the European Communications Committee, the ECC, which is the top body for, or the regional telecoms organization for the European region that is hooked into the ITUR. So now what's happened is this process in CPT and in ITUR sort of become entangled. So we have the same people doing the same work, but we go to different venues and different meeting rooms. And what tends to happen is as the things progress, the two levels sort of, piggyback as they develop. So we see some studies maybe coming into CPT, and then we see them reflected into the ITU work and so on. So it's not just only about ITUR. It's also about CPT, and there are some other considerations that are important for that I'll come back to later. And as we heard, the point of the work is to study technical and operational measures that might need to be applied to the amateur service and amateur satellite service to protect the radio navigation satellite services. And actually, we have a nice page, because I put a lot of text on it, on the IARU website that you can find there, which explains a lot of the background information. And, towards me. Okay, so, well, I don't need to touch on this too much because Attila has already explained the next problem. So the first problem is the co-frequency nature of where we are. Second problem is the regulatory status, and as Attila explained very nicely, we're a secondary service within in the ITUR frequency allocation table. That means we have to not cause harmful interference to a primary user, and we can't complain if we get interference from a primary user either. The amateur satellite service also has an allocation there from 1260 to 1270 megahertz, but that is allocated by a footnote, actually, in the radio regulations. That's what these like 5.29, 5.30 are. But that's also effectively on a secondary basis, and also across all three regions. So it's the same status, whatever region, all around the world. So I think we've already sort of mentioned the regulatory status, so that's the second issue. So looking in a bit more detail at the frequency allocation, so looking at that block on the first slide, which was kind of inside the red rectangle, we can look at it in a little bit more detail to appreciate the problem that we have. So here we see the little bit of GPS. I'm so worried about the edge of the stage here. The little bit of GPS that comes in at the bottom of the band. There's the Russian system, which extends below the bottom of our band up to 1255.76. And that's right, I think the spot's too small. Then we have this is the Chinese system, Compass, also called Beidou. I think they just changed the name. That is 1256 to 1280. And then we have the Galileo and the Japanese QZSS system, which actually is a regional system, but still, it's in the band. So the whole Galileo goes right for the whole 40 megahertz wide system, right up to 1299.21 megahertz. So to sort of superimpose it on that, you can see here we have a summary of the IARU band plans. I mean, okay, if you look in the band plan in Region 1, for example, you'll see a lot more detail than just these blocks, but we've tried to summarize it the best way in order to make sense of it for the studies. So you can see where we have like medium bandwidth modes. So here we're talking about things like perhaps narrowband FM voice repeater systems, things like that. ATV, which is obviously a wideband system. Then we have the satellite uplink block, more ATV, and more medium bandwidth modes. And then the bit you guys are interested in, which is just sort of in here, this is where the narrowband modes are located in the band. But you can see, right, there are not many places where we're not co-frequency with the RNSS system, whichever one it is, whether it's Galileo, GLONASS, or Compass. Tiny little space here maybe, tiny little space up the top of the band. So, it's an absolute co-frequency problem. So there's no receiver discrimination or anything like that that can help to solve the issue. So it's very clear or very obvious that any emission from an amateur service transmitter is going to be received by an RNSS receiver. So these are terrestrial receivers like you have in your phone. So it could be quite a wide deployment. So it's quite an issue for us, if considering that we're not meant to cause interference. Okay. So these challenges are, well, as I've just said, we're a co-frequency with almost everywhere in the band with an RNSS system. This is problem number one. So if we had to carry out our responsibility of not causing interference to an RNSS system user, ground station receiver. Well, actually, we have no idea where they are, right? It could be anybody. Guy in the corner at the back there could have one right now, right? We wouldn't know. So we don't know where their receivers are operating, so we can't just protect them on a kind of a simple geographic basis like that. The RNSS users will be, using some kind of technology that will be, I mean, if you use GPS, for example, you use it in the sort of Google Maps kind of way, right? This is how you sort of manifest itself on your device. And sometimes, you look at your Google Maps and your little spot says you're on the other side of the road, and then it decides you're not quite, you're actually over this side of the road, and then maybe over here, while it sort of, searches for more satellites and things like that. But that dithering might be not down to visibility of a satellite, it may be down to interfering with the receiver. But the RNSS user will not be aware that that's the case. So they won't know interference is occurring. You might think that's a good thing, but there we are. The new element is that the Galileo system, which is really the one that is causing us most of a headache at the minute, wants to roll out and is developing what it calls high accuracy services in the band 1260 to 1300. And they have some commercial ambitions for this service as well. So yeah, they want to make money. And I don't know quite who wants to make the money, but someone wants to make the money there. Yeah, and there are a lot of industrial concerns as well who have interest in supporting this, with receivers, with other kind of infrastructure that goes to support the whole network, stations in remote places, monitoring stations, and so on. So, we have a lot of not just political, but commercial pressure coming to bear against us in these discussions. And then finally, of course, we're told that there will be a widespread deployment of RNSS receivers, well, Galileo receivers. There's already a lot of GPS receivers out there. So yeah, Galileo are aiming to roll out these services in the next few years. In fact, they didn't want to wait till WRC 27 to start dealing with the problem because they had this urgency. And I think they're coming under some pressure now because Galileo has been under development for quite some years. It's sort of gone a little bit hot and cold if you've sort of followed the history of it a little bit, but now it's kind of hot. Satellites are up there and are operational. Yeah, so the pressure is building. So, what is being done then? So, okay. So we have the agenda item which says that we've got to somehow have a look at the amateur applications in the band so we understand what's being used in the frequency range, and then try and find some measures that we can put in place to ensure that these very valuable RNSS receivers are being protected. So at the moment, what we have, if you look at the studies that have taken place both in CPT and in ITUR, they're pretty much the same. They tend to boil down to eventually, at the core of it, there's a kind of a propagation model-based estimation of the kind of interfering signal level that you might expect to be seen at a RNSS receiver from an amateur transmitter. So the ITUR has a huge, whole study group actually, dedicated to building propagation models for all sorts of different services and all sorts of different situations and scenarios. Some of you may be familiar with those. And there is one that is being used here, which I don't have the number on there for some reason. 14, it's gone out the top of my head. We'll see it in a minute. Anyway, there's a particular propagation model that's being used to estimate the received signal level at a remote RNSS receiver, and then that is compared to what is known as the protection criteria for that receiver. Now, those protection criteria for the RNSS receivers, this is the level that should not be exceeded. If you exceed that level, then really it's deemed harmful interference to that service. So effectively, you would expect that that service, whatever it might be, whether it's RNSS or any other service that may have a protection level, If it starts receiving interfering levels above that, then it will start to fall over. So that's the kind of measure. So this protection criteria for Galileo, I will mention Galileo a lot because I will say that most of the studies have been done by the Galileo folks. I have to say they seem to be the busiest people in this. Are all themselves enshrined in the ITUR recommendation, so they're agreed in the ITUR, and they have in this recommendation M1902 all the protection criteria for all the various RNSS systems in various modes for narrowband and for wideband interfering emissions and so on. So we have a NEG 134 dBW is the protection criteria for narrowband emissions, which are any emission below a bandwidth of 128 kilohertz. That's probably, I think most EME emissions are probably below that. For wideband emissions, which are anything above 1 megahertz, that criteria is NEG 140.5 dBW per megahertz. Anything between 128 kilohertz and 1 megahertz is for further study. It means there's no figure, but that's where it is. Yeah, so I think I sort of, this NEG 134 dBW figure, just to give you a kind of an idea of how much that is, I think I sort of worked out it's roughly a kind of S1 kind of signal level on a regular receiver, let's say, roughly. So, you know, not the strongest signal, but not nothing. So that's the first thing. So propagation model predictions try to predict, you know, how far out they might expect to see interference from an amateur transmitter, given some assumptions about the parameters and characteristics of that amateur station. Then we have, secondly, some conducted measurement programs. These have been carried out by the European Commission actually themselves, their joint research center in Ispra in Italy, but also by Germany. As a university in Germany, it's a military university, I've forgotten the name. They carried out some similar measurements using some representative Galileo receivers and some representative amateur equipment providing the emissions. Some cases they were simulated, some cases they came from real radios. And, you know, trying to assess the compatibility with those signals of the Galileo receivers and their, you know, how likely the interference is going to cause them a problem. And especially what happens if you move it around in frequency. This is something that is quite interesting, and we'll come back to that a little bit later. But the point is, so you've had propagation model estimates, conducted measurements, and then we have 2 interference cases, only 2 that have been documented. We keep reminding them of this, but there we are. And they're also reported in the as part of their studies. So this provides them the evidence, if you like, that interference can be occurring. So if we look at a propagation model estimate, it's 1546. That's what I was trying to remember. P1546. And why is that an arrow up there? Okay, I apologize for that. I was doing some updates in the back this morning, and I obviously missed that. Okay, so the propagation model is 1546. That has been used, and along with sets of typical amateur station parameters. So as the IARU, one of our first tasks, and within the working group in the ITUR that works with amateur equipment or amateur services, our first job was to provide you know, what we consider to be realistic data about the characteristics of regular amateur stations, whether they be you know, doing regular single sideband terrestrial working, whether you're doing EME, whether you maybe a repeater station, whether you maybe an ATV station, and everything like that. So there is, in the ITUR, there is a recommendation, 1732, which actually has a lot of information about the amateur services and the parameters that should be used for sharing studies. But it's rather generic in the sense that it covers, it tends to cover a range of frequencies. So I'll talk about amateur transmissions between 1 and 3 gigahertz, and then maybe between 3 and 15 or something like that. But we wanted to be sure that since we need to look at this in great detail, we wanted to provide them with the best information, precise and specific to the 23 centimeter band. And this was agreed. So So that's what we've done as the IARU. We've made sure that they're using what we consider to be the most typical or the most representative characteristics of the amateur stations to do the studies. In the main, these propagation model estimates have been carried out by France, using the Galileo protection criteria, and also by China against their compass system criteria, which actually are very similar. If you look into the recommendation, you see that the levels don't really vary very much between the different systems. And anyway, all these RNSS guys are all in it together, so they all, confer on what studies they're going to do. So I think France probably prompted their Chinese friends to do a study, but there we are. And these are the kind of outputs that we have. Now, this is not, if you were to look into the draft report, you would see dozens of these pictures, and you'd see quite a few of these pictures too. So this is just a little snapshot to give you some idea of how the thinking is going and how the process is moving within the technical studies. So these ones I quite like, actually, because as you can imagine, this shows X and Y, just distances in kilometers. You've got your amateur transmitter in the middle, and then the propagation model does all the calculations around it of what the expected signal levels might be. There might be some assumptions made about clutter, for example, in the model. There are assumptions made about the number of locations, because the reception at some distance away can be a statistical sort of event. So 50% of locations for 1% of the time in all these places. And then obviously the kind of color is the sort of temperature of the signal levels. So obviously the red hot is the highest signal level, blue is the lowest signal levels. And not unexpectedly, it comes out looking a bit like an antenna, a Yagi antenna pattern by and large. So on this figure, it shows the results. The bit in the middle actually is an exclusion zone. Are we having an earthquake? Because the model only goes down to about 1 kilometer or something. But this shape is effectively where that criteria of neg 134.5 dBW would be exceeded. You can see in the side lobe level, it's generally around about 10 kilometers. In this main lobe direction, it's around about 26 kilometers. So I think this is for a 100-watt amateur transmitter. And then this other figure here is another approach that has been taken by the French administration, actually. They are looking just on main beam, which is very unfortunate. We keep reminding them of this. And they've just virtually done the same run with the same propagation model, and they've used different criteria here. So here we have the narrowband sections of the band, the top of the middle, and then in the middle we have the wideband portion where the ATV activity would take place. This is focused on region 1. There are other figures for region 2 and 3 where the ATV would be at different places. So you can see the different criteria makes a small change, but not a huge change in the protection distance. And then they've done, they've gone bananas. They've done every 1 milliwatt to 300 watts. Okay. So not unexpectedly, as the power goes up, so the distance increases. But you can see in this figure, and one of the difference to the one on the left at the moment escapes me, but the transmitter line for 100 watts is about there. So narrowband comes out to about 13 kilometers on that plot there. Yeah. So this is the kind of stuff that is being submitted into these studies from these administrations. That the approach taken with China was pretty much the same. Yeah, we have a few issues with some of this, as you can imagine, but this is kind of where we are at the moment. So in terms of measurement campaigns, again, there's a lot of detail. Again, if you looked into the report, you'll see a couple of annexes with huge amount of data on these measurement programs. The German program did a really good job, and even the JRC did a reasonable job as well, trying to do this kind of work. So you have a kind of a setup here. You have an anechoic chamber, and inside the anechoic chamber, you've got 3 representative, apparently, GNSS or RNSS receivers. You have a system providing a a signal for the GNSS receivers, and then you have a system to provide amateur signals also radiated towards those receivers and so on. And, you know, very basically you just sort of, you know, ramp up the power on the amateur side until the receivers fall over and start to have problems on the RNSS side. And what they did was they looked at a number of different sort of frequencies within the IARU band plan. So, you know, they did, and modes as well. So they did Morse, narrowband FM, digital TV as well, on some D-Star type transmissions. You know, they did the Morse at the 1296.2 because we said, hey, this is where Morse normally occurs, in a narrowband portion of the band. Narrowband FM at 1297.5, you know, in one of those medium bandwidth sections of the band. Digital transmission at the top end. And then DTV more towards the middle of the Galileo frequency, which is interesting. So, you know, there was some thought put into this about, you know, where you might expect to see things that are more sensitive. And then they tried, because they were focusing, I have to say, on the Galileo system, they tried a few frequencies, you know, either side of the center frequency of the Galileo system. By the way, the Galileo signal is a very broad spread spectrum, sin X over X type spectrum, and it goes pretty much covers pretty much the whole 40 megahertz. Actually, they have two signals. They have one which is kind of I don't know what the technical word for it is, but you have the positive sin X over X, and then another one which has a null in the middle, actually, and it has sort of two kind of signals overlaid on top of each other in the band. But they tried some frequencies, you know, offset from that center frequency. So offset up to, you know, nearly 24 megahertz away from the center frequency. Narrowband emissions were tested, wideband emissions, and so on. So, you know, no small task. Quite a lot of work has gone into that. And they put a lot of effort into investigating this. And the kind of results, I mean, there's a huge amount of results in the report. I'm not going to touch on that. But by and large, they tend to try and explore whether there's any benefit in actually moving away from the E6 center frequency. And, well, they found that, you know, there are all sorts of things that can vary the level of improvement you might get. They had these three receivers, and they found that across, this is a snapshot of one result, across that frequency range for the D-Star test signal, for example, at megahertz, 0 megahertz, so in the middle of the Galileo system and at the edge, 20 megahertz away, the improvement in the amount of extra signal level that the RNSS receiver could tolerate was 46 dBs for one receiver, but only 13 dBs for one of the other receivers. So clearly there's some element of receiver implementation that comes to play here. It was noticed that receiver A actually has a narrower bandwidth, 30 megahertz, but that we couldn't really find what the difference was in the receivers B and C, which is 26 and 13, both of which were reported to have 40 megahertz bandwidth. This actually causes a lot of discussion because we always say, well, why just make 30 megahertz wide receivers if this is good enough? You know, why not make them all like that, and we can get 46 dBs of improvement at the edges of the band? But yeah, apparently they don't want to make them all as narrow as 30 megahertz. But there we are. Gets a bit tricky. So generally, the receivers exhibit a higher robustness to narrowband signals when they're at higher frequency offsets, generally speaking, although as you see, the level is sort of not clearly defined. But they have a low tolerance to wideband interference, especially when those emissions are close to the center frequency of the Galileo system. So this really affects the ATV guys. You guys can say, no, we don't care about that. So the ATV guys have a problem there if they're near the middle of the E6 carrier frequency. As I say, you can, if you really wanted, you can look into the report. You can see all these results for all sorts of different situations. So in Germany, their measurement campaign was very similar, maybe a little bit more detailed than the European Commission one we were just looking at. Here again, they had a whole range of amateur test signals, DVB-S, DVB-T, FM TV as well, FSK, and single sideband FM as well. Again, feed them in through a coupler into the RNSS receivers, which are where? Somewhere here, up the top there. And again, same thing, ramp up the signal levels until the receivers fall over and sort of, document the kind of degradation that you get as those signal levels increase. So Germany took a slightly different approach. They grouped signals into sort of categories G1 to G4, sort of narrow bandwidth, medium bandwidth, medium to high bandwidth, and then wideband with the TV. And again, the frequencies were chosen according to the IARU band plan, and with a particular focus on the E6, the Galileo center frequency. So the results from Germany pretty much showed the same thing. This is again a snapshot of a lot of other results. Really, what I want to try and show you is that there's a lot of work that has gone into this. It's not just been treated, casually. Here we see increasing absolute RF power going in, and here we see character noise effectively coming from 0 down to -5. So basically what happens or the degradation, that is, the change in the character noise. So basically what happens as the signal level increases, as you might imagine, then the degradation in the character noise starts to increase. And what they did here is they tried, for example, something according to blue one is according to the IRU band plan. This one, I think, is at the center of the E6 block. And this one is something else. I'm not sure what that one is. Oh, they introduced a thing called the Interference Suppression Unit, ISU. This was a piece of technology that Germany thinks could be very useful for minimizing the potential for interference. So, yeah, anyway, if you look at all these results, you see these conclusions. Again, worst case, when the signal is in the center of the E6 band, frequency separation yields significantly higher tolerable levels. You might get a sense of where this is kind of leading. This ISU can significantly reduce the impact of interference signals, particularly for narrowband signals. And there are some results for that up here, but I'm not sure I can explain those very quickly. But it's difficult. ISU is difficult because the Galileo folks say, well, hey, we're primary service. Why should we have to build extra equipment to protect our receivers? The regulatory status is quite clear. You're secondary, as they keep reminding us. We're primary, as they keep reminding us. So, we don't have to do anything. Why should we spend money building an ISU and taking a hit on our receivers, maybe just to ensure that we're protected from you secondary users of the spectrum? So it becomes this tricky sort of discussion, but it's not off the table yet. So, because you could take a different view and say, well, guys, you want to have receivers that are going to work reliably in the real world, right? And in the real world, hey, I don't know if you know this, guys, but there are not just amateur signals in the band, okay? There are other things as well. So, you might want to just think about that a bit. By the way, they also have, they share the band with radio location radar systems. As a 23 centimeter band user, I'm sure you've seen radar blips on your receiver. But they say, well, we know about that, and we know that they're primary. We can't do anything about that. We have to tolerate them. That means we have some technology, they tell us, to effectively blank in some way the radar pulses because they're sort of repetitive. And we can, discard that, and our receivers can survive. I have to wonder, really, 5 kilometers from an airport radar, really, are the receivers going to stand up for that? I'm not sure. Is this being recorded, by the way? Yeah. But the point is, oh, is it okay? But the point is, though, that if we have any discussion about any aspect that, that we say, well, improve your receivers, it's no, we don't have to do that. you know, it's not our job to worry about that, but hey-ho. So what else? Interference cases. Yeah, there are these two cases. One is this example of a, well, first of all, there was a historic case. This really kicked the whole discussion off about more than 5 years ago, probably about 7 years ago now, with a interference from an ATV repeater in Germany into a Galileo control station. This is one of the cases. In the end, the German administration, of course, they found where the interference was, and they turned off the repeater, and everything was fine. The second case is very unfortunate because this is kind of Lake Maggiore. This is where ISPRA is, which is where the JRC, Joint Research Centre is for the European Commission, where they're testing their new services, the Galileo services. And 15 kilometers away is a FM repeater station on 1297 point something, 1297.3. And you can see, whoa, they got a great big spike on their receivers, and their receivers were falling over as a result of this. So, yeah, they're a little bit unhappy about this. Apparently, I understand that they complained to the Italian authorities. Italian authorities said, it's a licensed station, so what? So I don't think they did very much yet, but there we are. But it doesn't help us because, you know, they've got these clear cases that they can see where the interference has caused the receivers to fall over. So when we argue, you know, well, there's only ever 2 cases, they say, yeah, but look at this. So what happens now? So what are the implications for us of all this? This is what you really want to know. So first of all, removing the allocation is outside of the scope of the discussion. This is very clearly defined in the RTOR resolution that defines the scope of the work. Finally, the last few words, I think, in the resolution are without removing the allocation. So it's not about removing the allocation. If anyone tries to remove it, it'll be out of scope, out of discussion, not on the table. So that's kind of a good thing, you'd think, we hope. But there will be constraints on parts of the band because clearly you can see the problem we have. It's clearly there's going to be some impact on how we use the band in order to minimize these interference situations. So what is happening in Working Party 5A, which is where the amateur services are represented in the RTOR study groups as part of Working Party 5, they are now developing a recommendation. I mean, this is one deliverable from the RTOR, and that recommendation will be the vehicle, if you like, that will provide the guidance for the administrations on technical and operational measures applied to the amateur service, blah, blah, blah. In CPT, as I remember, because don't forget, there is still a European angle on this, they will also mirror this guidance. It'll be in an ECC decision, which is something that applies to the 47 CEPT countries, because they want to harmonize the band for Galileo, because they want to support Galileo, obviously, as a European project. But even more so, the European Union want to support it even more. And so it's very likely that they will eventually provide their own European Commission decision, and that will include the guidance. And that will become mandatory for EU countries because they have the power to require European Union countries to interpret their decisions into national law. So they really have to do it. So this is kind of, RTOR recommendation is, let's say, voluntary to some extent. ECC decision is kind of voluntary. EU decision, EC decision will become mandatory. So, you know, you've got to be careful. And there is a chance that at WRC, some countries may try to mandate or make the guidance mandatory by incorporating it by reference in those radio regulations that we saw. So that means then it becomes part of the whole package in the radio regulations, you know, which is signed up to by treaty by all the countries involved. So you can imagine that's something that we'll be thinking about how to avoid that kind of thing happening. So what are the proposals in the recommendation? You want to get to the meat now, I can tell. So first of all, I really have to stress, none of these are agreed. These are all absolutely as draft as you could imagine they might be, in the sense that they've come in, as a contribution, they have not been discussed in detail at the last Working Party 5A meeting. There wasn't time. We worked on the other parts of the recommendation. But they have, as you can imagine, three elements really. Frequency separation. Remember how high that featured earlier? Power level restrictions, obviously, and the exclusion of certain applications, perhaps in certain parts of the band. So that ticks all those little boxes about sensitivity in the middle of the band, you know, how things might be better at the edges, and so on. And of course, how the power level affects the interference distance. So but I say, none of these proposals are agreed at this time, but remain under serious consideration. So they're in the draft working document. We fully expect that as IARU, we will make our own contribution on these for the next Working Party 5A meeting, which will be in November. Absolutely, for certain, we'll do that. So there are these three, basically. These have come from three different administrations, actually. So you can see the one in the red box says, hey, well, let's have the higher power narrowband operations in the range 1298 to 1300. So let's just nudge that up to the top end of the band. Let's allow, we could allow a higher power block in the middle of the band at 1250, maybe for wideband activities. So this would keep the ATV guys reasonably happy. And in the rest of the band, hey, let's have a 5 milliwatt power limit. So there you go. So that's where we are at the minute. I'm going to say anything more about that. The second proposal, this came from, this is from France actually, this is from Germany. Germany says, hey, look, the only things you need to worry about are the ATV across the Galileo band. So let's just move the ATV out of the Galileo band. You know, not sure what GLONASS think about this, but there we are. You know, everything will be fine. But I don't think, my personal feeling is I don't think that will be really acceptable to the RNSS community. I think they will say, well, there's still other things left there that could be causing us interference. And then they have this little segment that they want to introduce for FM voice channels. I think someone in Germany probably said, hey, we have some repeaters, so we need to keep them going. Yeah, I'm aware, 4 minutes. Time, yeah? 2:30, right? 4 minutes. 4 minutes. All right. So, or the Russian proposal is, hey, let's have an EIRP of less than 1 watt across the entire band. I'll leave you with that one for a minute. I've been told to hurry up. So, IARU objectives. So, we are a recognized sector member in ITUR. We're an observer organization. Actually, we have the same status in ITUR as the European Commission. Actually, we don't have the same political clout somehow, but we have the same status in the ITUR discussions. We can contribute in Working Party 5A. So we seek to ensure that the appropriate characteristics are used in the studies, appropriate usage information is considered in the studies when you're trying to conclude about what might be good. And of course, our aim is to try and minimize any eventual constraints on the amateur services as far as we can, bearing in mind that we can't remove everything. And on our position on 91B, this is a part of it, the important thing is that the resulting conclusions should be proportionate in scope and carefully justified so as not to unnecessarily inhibit development of amateur services. Retain the ability for as many of today's applications to be able to continue as possible. Minimum disruption to narrowband, and of course the engagement will continue. So that's my presentation really. I did have some kind of discussion points, but I think I'm kind of running out of time a little bit here. Do we? Hey, we've got more time. Okay. It's an important subject. Okay, we have more time. How much more time do we have, Nick?
I just want to explain, we will have a little bit more time because Jim, November 9, Japan, India, Mexico, sent me right now the email that he's not able to attend the conference because he got a COVID. and so that he has to cancel the trip, flight tickets, everything in the hotels here. So we have a 30 minutes slot more available in our program. So then we can extension the discuss, because I think that this is a very important topic. So let's do follow up for how long we will need, so that if we catch it, I would like to have a little bit more time also to Manfred in his presentation for 47 gigs, okay?
All right, thank you, appreciate it. So shall I do these other slides? Yeah, okay, so yeah, so that was the kind of information really part of the discussion. Guys got a question down there. But obviously, I guess you want to know, so what can we guys do? You know, we're here at an EME conference. What can we do other than worry about whether our band's going to disappear or not? So I think there are some important things that I'd like to air really that can help us in the ILU to support our position and our discussion as we go forward. And one of the, just to set the scene on that, one of the observations is that most administrations actually don't give two hoots about this topic. It's really low down on their priority for them, right? They've got far more important things to worry about, like spectrum for IMT mobile, spectrum for satellites or something else. This is really, really low on their priority. So we have, in the discussions, we have really only probably 3 administrations I can think who are really contributing to the discussion. Some from, well, we have France, you know, who are very supportive to the Galileo folks. You can imagine why. We have some Japanese are very important, are very concerned about their system, and China. So it's really only the RNSS proponents, you know, who are active, and about 2 or 3 administrations. But you know, as Attila reminded us, in WRC, there needs to be full consensus on any measure that comes out of this in the RTO, in whatever form it takes. So, you know, it's really important that we try to get those other administrations to understand that there is a body of opinion behind this, even though they may, to them, think this is a low priority item, who, you know, and the community who are concerned about what's happening. Because, in a way, we feel that it's not getting the peer review, let's say. So when people come in with studies, the only people who pay any attention to it are us. And we say, hey, you made some mistakes. All the administrations are just, oh, yeah, the T-break here, we don't care, you know. Really difficult. So most of the things that we can do, we think are aimed towards you, the community, so not just you actually, all the amateur community, making sure that your regulator knows you have this super interest in the use of this band, and that your regulator, and maybe you have to do that through your member societies, know that you really are, you know, there's an opportunity for the amateur services here. You know, we do good things, you know, skills building, learning, self-training, all these kind of things are happening, so that they can just, for a moment, when they're hearing about this, think, is it right that they need to apply such strong measures to this amateur service? You know, is this, do we think we agree with this? You know, and it might help them take a view. And that's, I think, where we need the help. And in particular, and it's really great that there are a few people here today who are outside of the European region, in those regions that are not, is this going out? That are not necessarily under the influence of someone like the European Commission and someone like that, who can force their positioning. So particularly people from other regions, regions 2 and region 3. So the Americas, it affects the Americas, it affects Asia as well. This is a global discussion, even though it's been driven a lot by Galileo in Europe. They want to be operating globally. So yeah, so try to make sure your national society engages with your national regulator on the WRC preparation. That's kind of a generic thing. We don't want the regulator to say, well, I never heard from my amateur community in my country. Obviously, they don't care very much, right? We don't want that to happen. You know that ensure your national regulator knows you're keenly interested in the agenda outcome. You know, so highlight their maybe activity groups, societies, special interest groups, and so on that you might have in your country or area or region. Again, just showing that there is an interest here. Make sure they understand the learning and skills building, as I said earlier, self-training aspects. As Dick mentioned, it's an important bridge to higher frequency band activity, people understanding how to work at gigahertz bands and so on. Again, not just about EME, it's about, generally, right? Make sure they understand really the realistic view of amateur operations. You can see in these studies a kind of a tendency for them to paint a very pessimistic picture. I mean, that plot you saw of just the main beam heading distances, if a regulator just sort of picks it up and says, oh my good God, they could be causing interference out to 25 kilometers. Oh no, we can't have that. Hey, it's not quite like that, right? If you look at the whole picture, including the whole sort of, taking into account all the elements of the characteristics and the usage factor of our usage of the band, which is actually quite low, is it really quite the problem that the RNSS community would have you believe that it is? So this is what we want to try and, get into their minds. Is it really quite the problem that some people are saying it is? And then, our view, as I said earlier, is that the outcome should be proportionate. So this, the 5 milliwatt thing comes into this. I mean, is really 5 milliwatts a realistic power level? I don't think it is really. And that whatever outcome we have, it shouldn't inhibit the development of the amateur services. So you guys want new people to get involved in EME operations, and other people interested in other applications, other interest groups. They want to have new people coming in that are interested to operate ATV or something there as well. So I think that's, for me at least, I think that's really where we need to get the support. We can deal with the kind of technical elements of the discussions in ITR. That's fine. It's there in black and white. But we need to sort of win minds and attitudes to the outcome of this agenda item, I think, to help us try to achieve an outcome which is, as we say, proportionate and realistic and allows us to continue. Yeah, I think that's all I want to say. Thank you very much for listening. The gentleman in there in the red shirt.
Just a short addition to this. Thank you very much, Barry, for this enlightening presentation. Of course, I see lots of worried faces, so it also disrupts us a little bit, but there's also hope, as you imagined, as you illustrated. What we wanted to do within the IROU is, in particular, what Barry mentioned here, what can you do to mention that in a sort of a fact sheet or a leaflet that you can leave at your authorities or at your local member state societies, like radio societies, so that everyone tells the same story. We wanted to have that finished by this EME meeting, but it's better to do that thorough and good than quick and dirty, so that will come later. Before we continue, I see Zdenek wants to say something. Oh, okay. Oh, okay, yes. Well, I think you can imagine what is in there. And I saw you drinking from this particular kind of thing yesterday, so I thought it is the same one, and it's for you.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you. As a contribution, as a gratitude for that you are here, as a non-EME, to tell all about this.
No, I appreciate the invitation from Zdenek to be able to have the opportunity to share where we are. Because, we don't want to hide this topic, right? We don't want to hide the topic. We want to make sure that everyone is aware of what's going on. So, and I've learned a lot, actually, even in just the day and a half I've been here already, about what you guys, can do in a 23 centimeter band, which helps us to forge those negotiations and, hopefully head in the right direction. And I'm really, the gentleman in the red shirt had a question. He must want to ask.
I think so, but Zdenek is going to moderate the questions.
No, just only information that this presentation which Barry had, so you can download it. It's available. You put it as a download in the PDF, so that if you want seriously, go through page to page, read carefully all the details, check the frequencies. Cheers, guys, and everything about. It's seriously, it's a very important topic for all of us who are interested to work on 23 cents now and in the future. Otherwise, we can work just only 47 gigs, so that we all will move to higher frequencies. If we lose this, for myself, the EME is dead. Seriously, this is what I said on the beginning. I am absolutely sure that it will kill the activity on EME. If we lose the 23 cents where we have in the contest easily workable 150 stations, it will be very bad. So thanks very much to Barry again, and thanks very much to Attila. So, and hope that we find some solution together with the WRSC in the 2023.
Can
Okay.
I just say one last thing there? Yes, thanks. And I still see a couple of guys with questions, but I just wanted to say that I think in terms of developments, I mean, this was pretty much the same presentation that I provided to the IARU meeting at HAM 2022, Friedrichshafen. You know, it does take time to develop. And even though this has been under discussion since 2019, it's only really now that we've started to see something conclusive forming, which is why we're really bringing these presentations now and not like 2 years ago, when really there was not much sort of really worth reporting or happening. And we fully expect that the sort of pace of this to speed up now. And probably, I imagine the next time we'll have some real developments will be after that meeting in November, the next Working Party 5A meeting, because that's when the recommendation will come up for discussion again, and so on. So we will start to see things moving ahead. Thank you.
Yes, okay, thank you, Barry. And we will moderate some questions now. So if there are anybody having questions, I suppose there is a lot. I will walk around with a microphone. Oh, Zenning is doing that. Okay.
Delta Lima 6 Sierra Hotel, just a short technical question to the rect box proposal. This 100 watts, is it transmitter power or is that transmitter power including antenna gain, ERP? Then Moonbones is dead.
It is transmitter power.
It is transmitter power, not ERP.
One of the serious omissions here, I mean, obviously, Barry, you have to present use cases, right? EMEers elevate their antennas. These models do not take this into account. And will that be, you know, I mean, this is purely selfish. It's about EMEers, for EMEers. How, apart from the enforcement issue, that's another discussion, how on earth do we give you a representation of what actually happens when we're on EME? And is that a consideration that you have in this discussion? I mean, it gets too detailed. I know that you cannot speak to these other members of this discussion in such a way, but it's very concerning to me that this is not part of your model, put it simply. You know what I'm saying?
I do, and I can answer that because actually it is part of the model. We have taken into account every application in the amateur service that we reasonably know about, whether it's EME, whether it's ATV, whether it's Morse telegraphy, whether it's digital modes or anything like that. They're all under consideration, but we have to sort of provide some representative characteristics for the studies. So I can tell you that in these studies, we have a thing called Home Station 2, which is a 4-meter dish on a 3-meter high pylon, let's say. So whatever what's the gain of that? 30 dB something, 30 dBi gain or something of that antenna. And that's the assumption that is used. And of course it is elevated 10, 45, 90 degrees, right? So it's under consideration. And obviously, as you can imagine, as you increase the elevation, so the interference distance decreases quite dramatically. So much so that the French said, hey guys, why don't we all do EME? So maybe you might have more people.
That is a question from Ingolf.
No, wait a minute. Well, to comment on Conrad, yes, it is actually the case that the duty cycle of our operations and where we point our antennas, it is part of the negotiations and the what can you do thing. So, and that's what I said. We are thinking about making a fact sheet or a leaflet, and there we can implement such arguments. Attila, microphone.
Yeah, now I'm trying to speak with a cold blood on the realistic issues how we are solving such a problems between other services. So one of the realistic outcome is that, remember my first slide when I told that only recorded assignments have international recognition and protection. Amateur service generally is not recorded in the master register, with the exception that the amateur satellites. So the amateur stations, the terrestrial amateur stations, are allowed to operate under the whole service area of RNSS. Service area is the engineering definition where all the compatibility studies are done. So one of the solutions might be for the stations that the EME stations, as of the decision, shall be notified, so everybody who will be interested to operate an EME station have to properly at home in your country to notify, so to give your antenna parameters, power, and after then the administration may restrict to say, yes, in the azimuth from this and this, the minimum elevation will be 30 degrees, in this azimuth will be, etc., etc. So there is a solution how the regulation is regulating other professional services when the compatibility issues are coming to the table. But we are not yet there, but at the decision that if all services will be still accepted after then, and the high power stations would like still to operate, the only solution will be this notification, recognition of all fixed stations.
Thank you, Attila. And I see Ingold has the microphone, so ask your question.
Would there be a risk that the bullet number 4 could be counterproductive argument that the authorities say that, oh, that low activity there, then we can use it for something else? That it's not used, almost. Is there no risk like that?
Out of scope. The use of the allocation is out of scope. So the discussion, as I said right at the beginning, about the allocation or changes to the allocation is out of scope. So but I understand your point. It's a good point, because in some cases we are kind of between a rock and a hard place. Because on one hand, we want to provide a realistic picture for the level of operation, because we think that helps with the coexist. At the end of the day, there's got to be a compromise. You know, you've seen it's all co-frequency. There has to be a compromise on both sides. And at the minute, we haven't yet reached that compromise. And part of developing that compromise, I think, is the understanding that actually the probability of there being interference from amateur stations, considering all the aspects like the level of activity, antenna pointing, etc., 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 reduce that probability to something very, very low. Plus, then you add in the probability, well, is actually the user even using the service in that area, and so on and so forth, right? You can see that the probability is very low. Now, at the minute, the primary users say, hey, but we shouldn't have to accept any interference. Okay, if you stick with that, then there's no discussion. So, yeah, but I understand your point. It is difficult. Rock and a hard place. Do you say that we're very busy or we're not? If we say we're very busy, then they say, well, we can never coexist because there's too many stations. So we've tried to say, okay, well, let's be realistic. And we've tried everything we can to build the best realistic picture we can of levels of activity. I can tell you, personally, I've trawled through pages and pages of contest results, counting up how many people, how many stations have been active and all this kind of thing to build a picture of what that is. But it's a good point, but hopefully we're, it's okay.
But we are fighting monster which already invest $1 billion US, so that's the problem.
10 million euros. I think Eric also had a question, or is it already answered?
Just a practical question. We have beacons on 23 centimeter band all over Europe. I'm in charge of maintenance of a beacon in Belgium. We have also the ON0 EME moon beacon in Belgium, which is under repair for the moment. What would you suggest? Should we keep a low profile, maybe reduce power, maybe what do you suggest?
I would suggest, yes, I would suggest to keep a low profile and to show the authorities our goodwill to help solving this problem. That is, I think, the only way we can get out of this. I have also read something about the case of during the Olympic Games in France. There was lots of discussion about the usage of the frequency spectrum and that amateurs would deliberately disturb the transmissions. Well, that is not working in our profit. I mean, we have to show our goodwill, and I think from the side of the ITU, you see the same. They have not said these amateurs have to get out of there. No, they also look for a solution. Yeah. Yeah. He's not here today, but I guess that it's a good idea. Yes, he might have to move to frequency. That's what that is what is the case. He might have to move to 1298, but I guess it's a good idea. If I will talk to him. I don't think that's necessary. I don't think that's necessary.
There's no need to change anything at the current time. This is still negotiation, but clearly at some time in the future. I would say at the moment there hasn't really been a lot of discussion about, let's say, continuous signals like beacons. They've been talked about in the context really of repeater stations, which obviously are not permanent, although in some cases some stations do operate in a beacon mode when they're not carrying traffic. So we'd have to see. It may mean that, we'd have to move the frequency, perhaps to a different part of the band, but at the minute, we just carry on as normal at the moment, no problem.
I had a question, and this may be adequately covered, but in terms of argument for coexistence, is the fact that your navigational modulation schemes are basically, simplistically saying, time domain based. They're like the difference between WCDMA and conventional, carrier-based modulations. Where both types exist, and I'm not hearing much being said about looking at it. If you look at CW, and it's not just the time it's on, it's when you're looking for a particular type of waveform, it will the randomness of CW won't will be give you suppression of the effective signal level. And if you look at the digital modulations that at least this free EME, I can see the problem with, as you say, you talk about video, and if you have video, amateur video, that's a different story because of the way the energy is spread. But the modulations we use, it's not just when we're on, it's the patterns that we use of our modulation and the randomness of our patterns, which should give us separation in terms of the interference. And that really should be looked at, because I think that's a major factor here.
Yes, Al, I can tell you that we have been thinking about that and discussing about that, and that's why we mention also the duty cycle of our transmissions, because the transmissions, in fact, disturb a delay in the process of the data. And if there is just a short interruption, it's not as bad as a continuous signal. So the continuous signals, wideband, ATV, is much more worse and the beacon continuously transmitting than us EMEs, for instance, who have small duty cycles and have short transmissions. Oh yeah. But this has been thought of, yes. Thank you very much. Attila has something to say, and then...
Just to say that I am not the Yaru representation. I'm here as a private person, so I may have a little bit different view on the message to the Belgian friends and all others. Eric, that opposite. Remember again my first slide, international recognition. So one of the biggest mistake of the whole amateur community is doing, it's not the EME now only, but generally. Why, let's say, the beacons are operated under amateur license of the particular user? Why the beacons are not requested the regulatory authority for a specific license to gain a recognition of the beacons? Same, Earth stations, lot of amateur community people are operating the satellite Earth station based on their private or club license. But if the amateur Earth station or the beacon is requested under specific amateur license issued by the regulatory authority, you have a recognition. Please, my first slide, again, every day repeat, international recognition and protection is gained only from the recorded assignments. That's the message.
Okay, Attila, thank you very much. We have to observe the time. We needed that half hour. Thank you for that. Well, it's an important topic. Thank you very much for that. Is there any other urgent question? Otherwise, I give the microphone to the moderator, Mirka.
Okay.
Because there's an important coffee break coming on, I think.
So thanks to Barry, Attila, and Dick for very important topic we have discussed. So, and now we will continue. Yesterday we had very nice workshop about 47 gigahertz and group around Manfred, the DL7 YC introduced us very interesting things about this, and now we'll continue.
Yeah, okay. So after this very important theme from 23 centimeters, just the opposite side, and my recommendation is if we lose 23 centimeters, please move to 47 gigahertz. This is exclusive. At 2004 and 2005, one of the first amateurs tried 47 gigahertz EME for the first time. RW3BP Sergey had this idea and could attract some more stations, like Barry, VA4MA, and W5LUA, everybody knows him, and Gary, 86FP, now K6MG, and they all tried in these years, 2004, 2005, to establish a two-way contact, and they were successful. And then from 2005 up to 2022, nothing happened. And I had the idea in 2018 to reorganize that and ask the old player, what do you think about? Do you have still the equipment? And they said, yes, we had, but it is in the garage or somewhere. But they are all willing to do. And then I started to build my own station. You can see here the rough experiment description, what I have done. I had a 2.4 meter prime focus antenna. I built a VA4ME or Cuma feed fitting my 0.4 F2D dish. and the dish was working before, or the dish is originally a 10 to 12 gigahertz dish, was working before on 20 gigahertz, very successful. I tested it also on 76 gigahertz with good results, and I said, this must be work. And then, the noise figure I had at that time, 2020, was very bad. It was the noise figure from the transverter from dB6 and T, and this is roughly 5.5 dB, not good enough for EME. And then I tried combined the project. I bought the MMICs from OMIC. They had a very good preamplifier, MMICs, sent it to Japan, and Stanek told it, JA8CMY, he is silent key now from last year. He constructed and bought and built the amplifiers together with JA1WQF. And this did not solve the problem that I need transmitter power to have a working station, because the transmitter power from the guys from the former times, from RW3BP is not longer more available. His tube is dead. The tube from Gary, VA4MA, the power supply is dead. W5LUA is the only one who could transmit at that time. And I tried to find a solution. And for me, the solution was to search for a tube, TWT, and I found one. It's a 25-watt TWT, and I tuned a little bit after a long way with the tuning, the voltages tuning, and was able to get out 42 watts. And what's also necessary is a low drift GPS signal that you have a stable signal. These are the data, the maximum data I could get from the sun and from the moon. This is a quick and dirty setup. I'm a fan of prime focus dishes because I'm lazy. It's just much more easy than a offset dish to find the focus point. And I follow my old construction concept. I built a very lightweight aluminum cage and put everything into the cage, including the TWT. Here you can see the power supply. This is a pillow box for outside, and I put the power supply into this pillow box. All the cables here, including the high voltage cables going to the TWT here, and the original rack from the 19-inch rack, they had a cooling cooling block, will I say, of roughly 8 kilos in the block. I scrapped it and tried how much I really need, and found out that this is from DB6 and T. They sell this block. This is only 1.5 kilo or something. Is fully enough to cool the tube. This is a close view. You see the feed horn as a main thing. I put it in a adapter ring in the center of the dish. On this side, you can see a little bit more the construction. So this holds the whole construction. This is very stiff to the cage, and everything is behind, very close. So the way from the TWT output here, this is below 5 centimeters. The main problem is to separate the power supply and the TWT. This is behind, this is the cooling block here. And the main problem I know from W5LUA he has with the connectors from the high voltage. So the sum high voltage is a little bit more than 15 kilovolts. And I go another easy way. I take a block from I think acryl glass, is that the right word? Yeah? or plexiglass, yeah, I take a plexiglass and glued other plexiglass stripes there and had the different voltages separated in between and put a cover block on, and so I can easy take them in and out and can take out the block. This is connected, fixed with the power supply, and if I want to put it in the dish, this is takes 1 minute and I have all the connections, and there's no need to struggle with high voltage connectors, because everybody I know at the moment doing work there, they struggle with high voltage connectors because they are all too old or whatever. They have sparks and everything. So this is the pillow box outside. I put the power supply in, cable out. This is the control cable. This is the 230 volts cable, and these are the 7 cables carrying the 15 kilovolts to the TWT. Very, very quick and dirty. This is the old control board. I put it here and close the cover, put a stone on that the wind cannot open it by itself, and that is rain protected, so it can rain outside. It's not necessary to take the power supply back to the shack. Combined picture, you can see here, these are the cabling from here, going here in the power supply. Okay, one DFC run another way. He had a 2.6 meter offset antenna, and we heard it today. Every antenna needs a special photon, therefore, because he have to use a much different photon. He tried W2 IMU, and the dish is calibrated much better than mine, up to 36 gigahertz, and a dish working on 36 gigahertz will easy work on 47 too. So my is a little bit far away. It is calibrated for 10, but works on 76 also. Maybe the efficiency is not so good. SSPA at the moment, I cannot really name it as SSPA. It's a 2 watt RF output from DB6 NT, and I think that Stanek will search for a power amplifier too. The values he reached are 8.6 dB sun noise, and this is a moon noise value, but I think this will be improved in the future. Yeah. Okay, this is the picture from Stanek. Yesterday in the workshop, he told a little bit. He can move this slide back and forth. The focal point is somewhere here. I think here is a focal point, and he can move the receiving photon. So this is a preamplifier made by JA8 CMY, and underneath is a cooling block, Peltier cooled. So I will say something later to that. And this is the SSPA from Stanek, and some criticism at the moment. This will work with this very tiny amplifier, but if you have a bigger amplifier, then maybe this construction will not work anymore. But it's very useful to test different preamplifiers. Therefore, it's a very good work. This is another view of the antenna from Stanek. Another view. This is now a one-piece mirror. The mirrors before are 4 pieces. This is a one-piece mirror, and I think the accuracy is much better than before. Coming to the problems, what we have. At 10 gigahertz, you can see frequency stability is not the question. Everybody can have oscillator signals stable enough to do that. But the problems will multiply if you go to 47 gigahertz. This is 5 times the phase noise you have here. Doppler spread, somebody who came first to 10 gigahertz said, oh, that is 200 hertz Doppler spread, terrible. but you have to struggle with 900 hertz Doppler spread on 47 gigahertz. This is much, much more, but it's workable. And Doppler shift even is only 20 kilohertz, so you receive your own signals only 20 kilohertz apart. Here it can be 120 kilohertz apart from your transmitting signal. Round-trip attenuation, higher, it's for sure. And what you do not have on 10 gigahertz is attenuation from oxygen and water vapor. And it turns out in tests from last year that it is always 4 dB, 2 dB to the moon, 2 dB back from the moon. So this adds to 4 dB here. But what are the barriers? What is the problem really at 47 gigahertz? This is the first thing is the dish surface. So you need a very good dish. Please inform yourself about Roux's equation. If the formula is very easy, you can put in your dish parameters and you see how many dBs you lose for the specific frequency you want to use, for example, 47 gigahertz. The tracking accuracy must be better than 0.05 of a degree for center pointing. I will later explain why. Self-Doppler shift, is, as I pointed out, is 120 kilohertz, but this can be managed by CFOM. If you have a transceiver capable at the RX time and at the TX time, tuning your equipment, I use a K3S, and it is possible then is a CFOM program in the digital mode will tune your receiver, and it's not longer more necessary that you take a look on that. That is automatic. As I pointed out, atmospheric loss is 4 dB both ways, and single spread can be we learned in the last months, it can be up to 1,000 hertz, the spread of the signal coming back from the moon. Normal station equipment today, there are very limited persons having equipment at the moment, is reaching from 1.2 meter, only one station having a 0.9 meter dish, up to 2.4 meter, nothing more, nothing less. The only thing you can do if you have to accept the performance of your dish, you cannot do anything. If you buy a very precision dish, then it's fine. If you don't have such a precision dish, you cannot do anything about, so you have to accept it. But you can optimize your feed horn. So if you have an optimization process that you have a more rectangular layer on the dish, then your efficiency will raise. Preamplifier transverter combination at the moment is below 2.5 dB, a state of the art, including the preamplifier from EBAN that can go down to 1.6 dB. At TWT or SSPA, for my view of the things, this must be greater than 10 watt. I believe at the moment, from all the experience, below 10 watt, it is not possible to establish a two-way contact. And the waveguide switch, there are several on the market, but switch must be below 0.2 dB, then all what you have done before regarding the noise figure and dish accuracy, it's gone if the waveguide switch has too much loss. Parabolic antennas, 10 gigahertz and 24 gigahertz and 47 gigahertz, you see the remarkable differences. At 10 gigahertz, a 2.6 meter antenna has 0.77 degree. The same antenna at 47 have 0.17. And this is really difficult to bring the antenna to the moon center. Aiming accuracy at this frequency is 0.2 degree. This is possible with normal rotators like Aegis or somewhat. At 24 gigahertz, this must be better if you would perfect. And here it must be 0.01 or something like this, because if you're aiming continuity is less than the 0.01, then you move always left the center, right the center, left the center, right the center. This is not so good. Surface accuracy, as I pointed out, must be at 47 gigahertz, 0.6 millimeter. So 0.6 of a millimeter, the dish should not have fluctuations from the ideal parabolic shape. And now I'm coming to the real barriers at 47 gigahertz. This was all normal work. Everybody knows who is QOV on 10 gigahertz and 24 gigahertz. And 47 gigahertz, some more critical points coming to the problems. The moon center is not identical with the moon noise maximum. So on lower frequencies, I do that, everybody does it, measuring moon noise and assuming they are in the middle of the moon. But at 47 gigahertz, my spot from my antenna, as Stanek yesterday pointed out, I can put them 3 times side by side to the moon, and I have to find really the center of the moon. So moon noise measurement is a very bad way, because I measure always the hotspot, and the hotspot is where the sun shining to the moon. And the next problem is that the sun shines today to the moon. I look to the moon visually and I think, oh, the hotspot is 0.1 degree from the right side, but this is 4 days later, because the moon has to be heated up by the sun, and the radio hotspot follows that always in delay. So the visual hotspot is not the radio hotspot. And the next very important point is we found that out from transmissions I made. At the moment, I one of the very rare stations I can transmit. DC7 KY could transmit also. But I act as a beacon at the moment and will be and was received and decoded by several stations. And they all found out that my 700 hertz TX sync frequency never come back at 700 hertz. Why? I had we thought about frequency accuracy of my equipment or whatever, and then we came to the conclusion that the moon, that the Doppler shift calculation is reference to the moon center. But if I don't be able to put my antenna spot exactly to the moon center, then the Doppler shift varies too. And what is it? CFOM, the CFOM calculation in the program calculates to the moon center, and everything what is apart from the moon center sums up to minus or plus initial Doppler shift in the range up to 100 hertz. So pointing must be calculated or camera controlled. For the calculation, I had a recommendation. Someone of us, maybe Jose, can do the work to write a program in the respect to the moon age from day number 1 to day number 28. What is the point of the hot point, and where must you shift your antenna in respect to the moon age? This, if you don't have camera control because of clouds or whatever, then it is absolutely necessary. This is a graph showing the moon temperature versus moon phase. You see it started with a full moon. It goes over, let's say, 100 degrees. 100 degrees means it's 12.5 degrees per day or something. The moon turns around Earth. Then the moon temperature drops from 270 to 200, and going back after a full cycle to 270. So it depends if you compare moon moon noise figures, it is essentially to say which day you measure, because it can be a big difference. This is another very interesting graph. This shows on the left side full moon and the position of the hotspot, of the radio hotspot following the moon days. And you see after 50 degrees, this means 4 days, the plus 0.15 degree plus variation from the moon center shifts to 0. Now the hotspot is in the middle of the moon, and after another time of 4 days or so, it's on the other side of the moon, minus 0.15 dB. Then it is stable a long time at that position, maximum 0.2. This is close to the edge of the moon, and then the moon age reached the position where they switched from one side to the other side. So the sun goes behind the moon viewed from the Earth. Then it switched very sharp into 2 days on the other side again to 0.2 degrees, and coming back after a full moon cycle to the very first beginning. And this has to be taken into account, that you know where are the moon spot if you make your alignment for moon center with moon noise measurement. This is an example, a visualization of the hotspot of the moon. This is a program written by Mr. Köppen. He is not an amateur, working together with Per Dudek at the DL0 SHF in Kiel, Germany. And here you can put in the frequency. Then you have to put in the moon phase, where you are in degree, and number of the resolution. This is the number of resolution. And then you can see an image here, and if you click in the image shows you, this is the antenna, half-beam antenna, right? And the image shows you where the hotspot is. This is very helpful to see, but it is not complete understand, because there are some more influences. This diagram shows, this is similar to the opener, shows the dependency if 2 antennas looking to the moon. For example, my antenna is a red antenna. I'm able to center my spot directly to the moon. If my current partner at the moment is 0.1 degree apart from that, we both have 1 dB loss crossing both. This is the green line here. We have 1 dB loss, and this sums up to 2 dB loss. So if I am at 0, my partner is at 0.1 degree here, then we have 4 dB loss, assuming we have both the same output power. So Klaus, DC7KY, he made this diagram, has roughly 6 dB less. So this minus 2 sums up to -8. So if he is only 0.1 degree apart, I can receive a single 8 dB less than my echo from the moon. If he is 0.15 degree apart, then it is 8 dB, and then another 6 dB sums up. It is close to impossible, and 0.2 degree, we don't find each other. This is 12 dB plus 6 dB. He is 18 dB below my echo. This is impossible. So this is the problem that you have with bigger dishes. Compared with a dish from Miguel, CT1 BYM, he eliminates with his receiving dish the whole moon, because he don't care where I am. I can be here, I can be here. He received me always. This is an example from Stanek, showing a little bit. I think this picture is from Jose, is that right? Yeah, maybe, yeah. This is from Jose. This is a very special program scanning moon noise and displaying the values of moon noise to show the hotspot. This is from Stanek here. He showed where the hotspot can be. So that's not only on the center line, it moves at the center line, the hotspot, during the moon phase, but even if you, it's only on the center line if you look to 180 degrees to the south. If you are far from the south, then it goes down and goes to negative values. So in the east and in the west additionally. You can fix it with a camera system. It's possible to do, but even this is very tricky to do, because you have to align your optical path with your electrical path. This you can do only at full moon, and not if you see the full moon. You have to wait for visible full moon, then you have to wait 3 days, then you have to measure the sun noise, and you see with a big dish, you have a flat top at sun noise measurement. You have to go to the left side, you have to go to the right side, you have to divide this by 2 to find the middle, and then you can align your scope that you have the moon in the middle. This is the only procedure possible to align them. Other ways always showing side by side. Except you have a tracking system like Iban, he is absolutely to the right position. I am not able with a 2.4 meter dish. It's impossible with my mechanics to be absolute, that I can say I have tenths of hundredths of a degree exact position. Thus, Stanek yesterday explained a little bit. Yeah, okay. But the other overlooked all the time. This is what Stanek yesterday told about RX and TX different photones we can use. This is a picture from 2005. Gary tried to cool down the amplifier sensitivities they had with liquid nitrogen and with foam around. This is an example how we can do today with Peltier cooling. This is a problem also, because if you cool down too much, then you have condensation inside the preamplifier, and you must do an automated procedure to measure relative humidity and temperature, and the controller have to switch off the cooler if you are at the critical borderline that condensation can occur. This is an attempt from the Japanese. For me, impossible, because there are 8 chips of a weight of 1 gram, and around are 20 kilogram. So this is a solution, and even, even this is a 12 watt, this is a 10 watt, this is a little bit more intelligent output coupler, so that's a little bit more power. But even the 12 watt are close to the borderline. Less will not possible. It's not possible to make a QSO. This is my way. I take out the TWT, put it in my cage. Here, this is the TWT, omitting the big cooling systems they had, and the original thing. Take a small cooler, computer controlled with blower, and that's all. Works perfect, and very close to the switch here, and the switch is directly connected to the photon. This is something under development, the APN318, and the old expectation was to get 32 watts, but half of that is enough, so you don't need 8 times this piece of IC. At the moment we are with 1 amplifier. We reached the border of 4.6 watts, so 2 amplifiers, or 4 of the amplifiers are close to 16 watts, maybe using such a combiner with 4 or whatever you want, and then you have the right things. But it's not ready yet. This is the TR, this is double. Oh, we talk about that. Close to the end, I will show how the stability must be. This is a very bad example for stability. This is a very good example. So stability on 74 gigahertz must be very bad if it's low phase noise. Are the stations QRV at the moment. This is Gary in California. This is Klaus in Berlin too. That's me. This is Ivan. This is Jose. Ivan is not on the list, I think. And the Japanese, Alex 1DB, I don't know. He is in the list, but I never heard something from him. This is Stanek. Hans is also here, is QRV. RW3BP is QRV RX. VA4MA have to struggle with the power supply and so on. So it's limited. This is the station, my station put in the dish, short picture. And this is the first QSO I made with, no, this is, I received W5LUA, but the other way don't work. This is the reception of him, but it's 2 years ago. This is JA1WQF, received W5LUA, successful with single decode here. Okay. And something about the settings, but yesterday Charlie told about it, so it's not longer more to explain. You can read it in the papers. Yeah, this is, I received DC7 KY, and the way around he received me. And this is an example from Jose. Nothing to see in the spectrum, absolutely dead, is dead, but he had a successful decode. It worked. This is an example from Ivan, received me with the 150 centimeter dish. Oh, sorry. And this is a different program. This is a microwave CW program. This is an CW transmission from my side to RW3BP, made 2 months before. And he received me successful with a report of 19.1 dB. So this is the very tiny dish, 90 centimeter from CT1 BYM. And I checked this because you have to trust that it worked. And the other partner said, yes, I received you, but maybe you can believe that, or you can believe that not. And I sent him a report because I never received him, but I sent him a report one time. And he, immediately he told me, yes, you sent me minus 22 dB or something. So he received me in reality. So this is the example what the 90 centimeter dish can do. These are 2 single reports, and these are combined reports, average reports. And nothing to see in the waterfall. So that is, sorry, Mirik.
Thank you, Manfred. A lot of nice work. Discussion is open. Any question, please?
If there are questions, I can talk later on with everybody who want.
Okay, so we can continue. We know mostly how important is low noise amplifier, but low noise amplifier for 47 gigs is not so simple thing. So Ivan, EB3 Foxtrot Radio November, introduce his design and construction, please. Light is okay. Here. No?
Okay, thanks a lot. Probably this amplifier is the bad thing that the COVID-19 has bring us, because now we'll see that this is the history of a lot of work and a lot of time. Okay. First, I want to say I'm presenting that in the name of our team that is composed by Jose, EC HMJ, and Luis, EFA DOM, and me. And we want to share about our current work, the tests that we have done, and the preliminary conclusions, because he has been 4 years of a lot of work. This history is really was start in the last EME conference in the Netherlands, where we was heard about the possibility to make a moon-bounce QSO at 47 with less of 10 watts, using a medium-sized dish with the help of the new digital modes. Probably this rumor was come from Manfred, maybe. Okay, but all you know, the main problem is that no parts of the shelf to make a full system of moonbones in 47. Then we was start from scratch to build basically all, okay? And this is a small resume from the last 4 years. First, we start, as I say, we start from the scratch. The first thing was measure. Then the first step is get a vector network analyzer to measure it in 47 and 76. As I was HP 8510C, we was built a scatter parameter to measure the S11 and S21. Basically, this is a harmonic mixer, some couplers, some amplifiers, and we have used WR15 waveguide, because this waveguide covers from 50 to 75 gigs. Then it's very easy to adapt to the WR19 for 47 and WR12 to 76. And okay, we will start to measure all the equipment that we have for 47, because 1 year before we was trying to break the world record of Tropo, and currently we are have the second record in distance. And therefore, the first time we see that all the plumbing, all the waveguides that we was using for Tropo not was okay for moonbones, because it was very loosey. Then Jose will start to pick aluminum blocks, and the idea was to get a similar result like the commercial waveguides, because as I tell you before, the homemade waveguides are very loosey compared with the commercial ones. Basically, the problem is in the flange of the waveguides, because the flange and the waveguide, you solder it, but the surface of the flange it's perfectly smooth. Then when you put the two waveguides all together, not are making a good mating. And this is basically the difference with commercial ones. Okay, Jose was starting to milling waveguides. We was measuring that. Up to finally, we was starting to get a result really similar to the commercials. Okay, encouraged with the results. We'll say, okay, now we can measure, now we can make waveguides. Then we'll say, using the Tropo material, basically the current transverter, the 1 watt power amplifier, we'll say, okay, let's try a power combiner to get a bit more of power on 47. Then the first thing was try to make a combiner to to get 2 watts, okay? We have to tune a 1 watt amplifier. The result, sorry, it's, well, don't have laser. Okay, this was the first one. Of course, the result was very bad S11, a lot of attenuation. And we see, but we don't know why. Then the first was start to simulate, was learn to use the HFSS simulator to see what was wrong and to see how much we can solve that. Then starting to make 3D pieces and simulations. Finally, we was make a better one. Of course, the first learned lesson was first simulate, but for build. But every time simulate, because here in 47, all the tolerances are really, really small, or in the middle one. Here, finally, with a very nice combiner, using finally 3 Q amplifiers, 2 SPA, 1 and driver. We just get 2.5 watts in a meeting at home in the 3 years ago. 3 years ago in the 2019. Okay, we can measure, we can make waveguides. We have a bit of quarter, not much, but not bad. The next major problem is, okay, we need a low noise amplifier. But as you know, the main problem is the chip devices that, of course, we don't have, we don't know make wave rounding, we don't have access to make bonds. Then the first thing was to ask to the EME observatory. His technicians and his scientists have a lot of experience in wave bonding because they are doing low noise amplifier for all the radio telescopes around the world and also with some space probes. And he was teaches about a bit of the requirements for microwave. We has purchased a second hand, a surplus bonding machine in eBay. Of course, the wrong machine because it was for bonding, but it was for heavy wire bonding, that it's for batteries, light bulbs. Okay, but after some months later, we was purchased the second machine with a West bond. It's especially for microwave. And the COVID-19 was come. Then in the lockdown in Spain was over 2 months. I was a lot of free time that every day I was talk over 5-6 hours every day learning to make wire bonding. Over all the days, hundreds of bonds, some days thousands of bonds. Here you can see a bit of the difference of the good bondings with the bad ones. The bonding is very tricky. The problem not is make the bond, because this is only a bit of practice. The problem are the settings of the machine, because the path of every device is different composition of the gold. Then you have to get a lot of experience to calibrate the machine with the ultrasonic power, how much time, how much power, because it is very tricky, because now you can get the correct settings, but maybe tomorrow the temperature or the humidity has changed, and you see that the bond not is okay, not is okay, and it's broken or etc. But of course, after make a lot of thousands of bonds, now you have the practice, and I am doing a lot of reliable bonds. Okay, now we are ready to make wire bonding. We can measure. We have a nice CNC machine to build the enclosures. Then we was ready to make the low noise amplifier. Luis, CFA DOM, was get the chips from Omic. Jose was starting to make the prototypes and the design of the box, and I was to making the simulation of all their parts, the waveguide, the PCBs, the props, etc. And finally, from the first prototype up to the first unit of the productions has to be 2 years, three different versions. This is the work of the 2 years. From the first one, of course, nothing to see with the last. The first really was a bit of copy of the Kune, but we see that this kind of waveguide, etc., not was okay. Then in the second version, we see we get a lot of better performance with the waveguides. And as I say, 2 years, a lot of versions. Finally, probably we have make it 10 or 12 working prototypes. And after this, yeah, in the 3.4, in the last one, we'll start the production. 4 months ago, we built 10 units, all soldered. And now we are starting the second batch that we hope maybe in October will be ready. Here, well, as I say before, first was purchase the wrong machine. We was purchase the second machine, and this is the third machine. The third bonding machine, it's for die bonding. This machine can make the pick and place for every device, or for the chip or the PCB, and can put the glue of the epoxy, because it's very, very important the quantity of the drop of the epoxy, because of course if you put too much, when it cures, it expands, and the epoxy can cover the chip or the device. If you put too small, it don't go glue, or with a small change of temperature, it will be unglue. But the same, a lot of testing, a lot of tests, and we are ready. Of course, the die bonding machine was a great success, because the first unit was mounted using teasers, but with teasers it's very difficult, because you have to, you cannot respire, and you have to sometimes your face is blue, but to don't respire, because of course if you not put the correct pressure in the tweezers, the component goes to another parallel world or don't know. Okay, this is part of the testing. Of course, a lot of noise figure measurements, stability measurements. One of the recommended of our hits, not only a very good noise figure, it's also a very good stability. For example, the current amplifier, the low noise amplifier, if somebody have it, you know that if it's connected to the 47 transverter, you put the finger in the input, and the transverter sometimes starts goes to transmission, for example. This unit is very, very, very stable. Here you will see 1.7, but really all the units are below of 2 dBs. We have units when 1.5, 1.6 at 22 or 24 degrees at the room temperature. And really, in every unit, when it's measured, we are very conservative, because I prefer to say that have 1.8, when really maybe have 1.6, 1.7, but the noise measurement is very, very critical, because a small matting, every difference with the wave matting, etc., you are seeing differences in the reading. Okay, after the success of the LNA, we have started with the power, because now we start to need real power, a bit of QRO. but he is a problem for us because the only chip available in the market for us is the Corvo, the TGA 4046. The other chips, like the APN that says Manfred, we cannot purchase it due to the exportation regulations of the USA, etc. But a lot of hard work, Luis finally can get 15 units. And now, pues, you are in the here's the units received 2 or 3 weeks ago, and inspired with the design of Yoko, GA8 CMA. As before shows Manfred, it's a very large unit. You are designing some more small, probably a quarter part. And now now we are in the stage of the development. In our case, we are using 2 chips. One TGA 4046 as PA and TGA 4522 as driver. And also are making and designing 4 ports power combiner. Now we are making tests with 2 ports. Now we have a final design with 2 ports. We'll make the same for to 4 ports, sorry. But as I say, now we're in design stage, and we hope that now in the next weeks we will finish the simulations, and we hope that early in 2023 will be ready. The idea is use only for amplifiers to get 5 or 6 watts. We'll see it's possible to make the QSO. I am confident that probably it's yes. Or not every day, not all the time, but maybe a day with good conditions, probably it's possible to make a QSO with 5 watts. In any case, we have a fallback. It's used 2 modules of 5 watts to put together to try to get the 10 watts. Okay, now for me comes probably the most funny part. This is, as I say, the current moon bonds in 47. For me, the moon bonds in 47, it's 2 blind persons trying to make a handshake. I'm sorry, but I say before, analyzing the tests and seeing all. Now, the problem or the challenge really is the big dishes, the tracking, the dish surface, etc. And okay, and also as say before Manfred, another important thing is the aiming calibration. At 47, you can directly, in my opinion, you cannot use the moon noise, because of course for the beam width, a 90 centimeters antenna have a beam width more small than the angular diameter of the moon. Second, the moon phase makes that you're not pointing in the center. Another important point is the tilt movement of the moon. You are in Europe, the moon is in one tilt, and a station in United States have another tilt. Then your peak or your maximum or the maximum spot in Europe not is the same than in USA. And of course, the only way that one station of Europe can make a QSO with USA, Japan, or Australia is that it's be sure at 100% that both stations will be pointing at the center of the moon. In my opinion, the only way is use the sun noise for the aiming calibration, and of course, have a good tracking system that where you are trust in it, that okay, my system is calibrated, I know that I am the correct position, then I make the QSO, I am tracking the moon, but don't worry about if the moon noise not is the higher or not is the best. Okay, you can check that to see if you are losing that, but forget to get the maximum. As I say before, the tilt, it's one problem, because this is the tilt for a QTH, but of course not this is the same one now here that before in USA. Here a hot spot, of course, at 47 it's less, because this one is the ALMA in Chile, maybe in 200 gigahertz, but in 47 the problem is the same. And can you see here, the sun in 47, it's completely fat. You can see that as a punctual source. And to check that, you have made some software tools. Here you can see the radio maps. These radio maps, both are plus minus 1 degree in azimuth and in elevation. And we take the power in every pixel. Every pixel have 0.1 degrees, 0.1 degrees, sorry. And here it's very nice, because you can see the sun at similar elevation, but one month before. What is the difference? So tell me to say, the black circle, it's theoretically the sun. The red circle is your signal at 3 dB from the maximum. And the difference of the two pictures is illumination. Here it's a dual mode Fedhorn. This is a dual mode plus a flare. For this, and you can see, for example, that okay, you are picking the maximum. Probably you are pointing to the middle of the sun, in this case, but you are losing part of the power. For this reason, it's very, very important, not only, okay, I am calibrated because I am getting the maximum peak of the noise. It's starting to check that if you really are in the center, then you have to make a offset 0.1 or 0.2 up, down, left, and right. And here, this is a very nice pictures.
You have a time. Yes?
I need 2 minutes more. Okay. Right. Only 3. Okay, thanks. Here you can see this picture is taken 2 weeks ago. And here you can see, probably it's the first amateur picture where you can see the moon phase. This one, it's only plus minus 0.5 degrees in a 0.05 steps. Another important, this is the final one. As I say, the power is nothing without control. Okay, large dishes, but the large dishes have problems because the tracking is more difficult, the beam is more small. Our theory or way is try to make the QSO with a maximum 1.5 meter dish. Probably 1.2 can be okay. And very important problem that exists in all the dishes that you have is the cross elevation. Probably in the lower frequencies, not it's a problem, but yes, start to be a problem in 47 or in lower frequencies with very large dishes. Is that all the parts that are holding the dish, like the mount, like the mast, the mount, etc., have not are perfect aligned and have some deviations in panel treat. And this problem is that you are calibrating to the sun or moon in lower frequencies. You are perfectly calibrated, you are tracking, but when you are away of the calibrating point, you are starting to lose the signal. This is for the cross elevation. as it's a bit deep, if somebody is interested, we can talk about it later with a beer. But basically, this is a typical. The issue is that at high elevations, you have an offset from the calibration point. We have two different ways to solve that. Jose has put one CCD camera in the antenna, not for tracking. This is very important. He has mapped all the sky with 500 pictures. After he has made with astronomy solver, he has the absolute position of every picture. Then he have offset error in every part of the sphere of the sky. Then his tracking software for radio takes this data and he have a real tracking. I'm using a different way. In my case, using a 2-axis inclinometer in the mount, I am reading and trying to compensate it in real time. In the USB pen drive, it's placed a PDF from Eutelsat that explains this equation, explains how to solve it in real time. And for now, nothing else. Thanks a lot. We hope all these tests can be really use it as motivational for more stations, more people for 47. Maybe it's the new fashion band, who knows? And maybe it can be used for our future 76, who knows? Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Ivan. That was not only VLNA, as was announced, but much more. So, any question, please? Charlie? Yeah.
Yeah, with regard to the die mounting for the TGA 4046, have you looked at the thermal modeling of that as to whether you need also to learn how to use gold tin solder for low thermal resistance? Because epoxy on a power device can lead to quite high channel temperature.
Yeah. Another advantage of the 4046 is we know that it works with a standard epoxy, with Epotech, because QNEC is selling from a lot of time the 1 watt amplifier. Then for now, we don't need to make E plus D for this chip. Of course, with other chips like the APN, we need a special glue, not epoxy.
I have also a question. You measured the noise figure about 1.7 dB. It was at which temperature?
Probably 23, 24, at room temperature. These amplifiers in the exterior in the winter will be 1.5, 1.6.
Okay. And do you consider about cooling?
No. Maybe if when 10 watts we cannot make a coaxial, maybe we start to cooling. But
okay.
Before, first we have to see.
Thank you.
Any other question?
So.
I don't see any hand. Okay. Ivan, thank you very much. Mirek, thank you very much for your moderating. We are moved now to the 16 hour and we have a 30 minutes coffee break. So please take a coffee, relax a little bit, and 25, please be back on your seats and we will follow up with a presentation from Charlie about the VS-X. And then I would like ask also Ben DL7 APV to go to moderate after the coffee. Thanks, Ben.